Shalom. Welcome to Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman. I'm joined in the studio by Mark Finkelstein of the Jewish Community Relations Commission of the Des Moines Jewish Federation. And we will be joined via Skype from London on our show today by Ishmael Khaldi, Israel's first Bedouin diplomat, an Israeli Arab Muslim Bedouin diplomat. So there's a good bit for us to talk to about Israel's Arab community and the Muslim community on our show. I just want to begin our world in 5 minutes, and we'll have Ishmael Khaldi on shortly after that. So this week, the major topic of concern is the potential shipment of S-300 anti-aircraft missiles from Russia to Syria. There have been various disputes of whether part of the system has already been delivered, potentially some of the missiles themselves. It's highly doubtful that any of the launchers have been delivered at this point. In fact, there's some argument that potentially none of it has been delivered. The impact of delivering these weapons, however, is that they would essentially make it much more difficult for either Israel or the United States to conduct any air operations against the government of Syria, which in essence allows the government of Syria to continue to maintain its cover and its actions against the groups that are trying to fight against the government. And this is a government that has killed many tens of thousands of its own population as it attempts to stay in power. And when you're dealing with a brutal dictatorship, giving it the ability to maintain cover is quite a problem. In addition, there is the issue of this potential these potentially dangerous systems falling into the wrong hands should the regime collapse, and potentially coming into the hands of those who would use it against Israel. Israel is extremely sensitive to improvements in weaponry of those who would use it against Israeli citizens, and rightfully so. The S-300 system itself could be used to target aircraft flying within Israeli airspace, and in fact, there's even been reports that it could be used to target planes at Ben Gurion Airport itself, which obviously would be an intolerable situation for Israel. So the S-300 system and the discussion concerning it continues to be at the forefront of our thoughts as far as the situation this week. Things with Iran are of interest in the fact that nothing seems to be happening with Iran. Not only does the Obama administration seem to be distracted by what's going on in Syria and potentially by trying to resurrect the peace process between the Israelis and Palestinians, but the domestic issues and the various scandals that are being discussed in Congress seem to have taken away all of the attention off of anything having to do with Iran. And there was even a discussion in I think on RAND the other day about the potential for containment of an Iranian nuclear program, which the administration has vehemently opposed to this point. But if anybody's going to do anything, we haven't heard who it would be, how, or when yet. And as time is growing shorter and shorter to deal with the Iranian nuclear program, we need to have some more concrete answers, and there needs to be some more attention paid to the situation. The rest of the world is also interesting this week. There was a report in South America about the fact that Iran had established entire terrorist network in South America, not just in Argentina. They conducted the terrorist bombing there many years ago, but also the fact that there's an entire network operating even today in South America, and the countries need to be aware of that. There is also the fact there was also a brutal attack against a British soldier last week, and the reaction to that, even in circles of people who were on the fairly liberal side, were very appalled. We talked about the response times, and we've talked about the response times, the fact that it took 20 minutes for any police force to get there because the police in Britain are not armed. There's a lot of a lot of concern around the world for the fact that people don't seem to have a good grasp on how to get control of things. There's a lot of anxiety, and the events that seem to be going on, such as the one in Britain, while they're connected to movements that are bigger, the jihadist ideal, they're not connected to any specific groups that we can tell, and that scares people because people like organization, they don't like chaos, and they don't like anarchy. And so as we're dealing with all of these various things that seem to be out of control, there's a lot of anxiety around the world. On the good side this week, there is a lot of talk about potentially moving forward in the peace process. How much of it will be effective is anyone's guess. And there are efforts to try to combat anti-Semitism in Europe, and French imams have met with Israeli imams to try to understand how Jews and Muslims get along in Israel and how they should be able to get along in Europe. Some very interesting discussions. Perhaps we will talk about that a little bit with Ishmael Khaldi after our break. That is the world in 5 minutes.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Drink, dance, party. Kitty's is the ultimate dance club in Des Moines. A huge dance floor with room to move, 3 bars to keep your drinks full, and kickin' DJs playing all your favorite dance music. At Kitty's, we've always got your birthday party planned with Birthday Fridays. That's right, when your birthday rolls around, there's only one place to go. Gather up your friends and head to Kitty's, where you drink free on the Friday of your birthday week. Find out more about Birthday Fridays at kittysusa.com. Kitty's, all kinds of people, all kinds of music, all kinds of fun.
Drug and alcohol addiction slowly steals a person's identity, tearing away pieces of their life little by little until one day it seems like the hope of a happy future is gone and there's no chance of getting it back. Here at St. Gregory Retreat Centers, we can assure you that there is hope. Our unique approach to recovery begins with the understanding that the dysfunction and damage caused by addiction can be overcome, not just dealt with. Don't let another day go by. Call St. Gregory today.
Whether you're 10, 25, 50, 80 years old and beyond, everyone needs to live within their means. I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America. For almost a quarter of a century, we've helped people of all ages learn to manage their personal finances to benefit them far into the future. When problems arise, we've got the experience you need to make those debt problems go away. Got financial problems? Call Consumer Credit of America.
If Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of America was your personal webmaster, Tom would filter out all bad debt emails. If Tom was your mailman, you'd never get any debt reduction junk mail. If Tom Coates was a lineman, he'd get any phone calls offering to reduce your credit card debt.
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of America, and we're still the best choice for credit counseling. We're local, we're accountable, and we can do more. You make the call when the time's right for you.
When it comes to competition, there really is none for Consumer Credit of America.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Shalom. Welcome back to Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman. I'm joined in the studio by Mark Finkelstein of the Jewish Federation of Greater Des Moines, and we are joined via Skype from London by Mr. Ishmael Khaldi, Israel's first Bedouin diplomat, who's also written a book called A Shepherd's Journey, the story of Israel's first Bedouin diplomat. And Mr. Khaldi speaks in various venues around the world, and many people in our audience, I'm sure, love to hear what you say. But as I was joking with Mr. Khaldi by email earlier, I said this is one of your opportunities to speak without having protesters present. He's often got protesters in the room. It is my pleasure to welcome Ishmael Khaldi to Understanding the World. How are you doing?
Doing fine, shalom. I'm very glad to be here.
Salam alaikum and shalom to you as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's like to grow up in Israel as a Bedouin?
Well, that was the reason I wrote the book. Starting as a shepherd living in a tent until 8 years old, and then having to walk 3 kilometers each way to an elementary school, and then never giving up. doing a master's degree in political science and joining the foreign service. That's a real journey. This is why I call the shipper's journey. So life was very tough, challenging. I'm coming from a very small, community who is nomadic by nature. Bedouins are not high-tech engineers. And the move, the transition to being a bit more modern, that has lots of investments, lots of sacrifice, and lots, of course, of compromise. You are joining a modern society, and you are living sometimes some of the finest in your culture. The 11 brothers. Unfortunately, I was the only one to move on to high school and then to university. But I keep, I know where I'm coming from. I know I respect my culture, and I live in both worlds.
Hi, Ishmael. This is Mark in Des Moines. Ishmael, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A father.
A father. Okay.
I remember that, when from my teacher at school, I went to high school and she was asking kids, and I said, hey, this is what I want to be. It was the easiest answer for me. Yeah, I never had a dream to be a diplomat, or high-tech engineer, as I said before, something else. I just want to serve my community, to help a family, help the environment I'm living in. And the wind took me in other directions, which I'm very happy to do what I'm doing. And, this is part of my life as being Israeli, and a Bedouin.
Now, I saw something about programs done in your village to bring knowledge of the Bedouin to Israeli people. Are there special kind of outreach programs that you're involved with, or your village is involved with?
To Israeli people?
Yes. I think there was something about helping outreach and understanding between Israelis and Bedouin, or at some point. I remember.
First of all, Bedouins are Israelis. We are Israelis.
I mean Jewish Israelis. I mean.
Jews and no, it's in general. We started a program years ago. That was after I went to the States, to New York for the first time in my life. Even before going to Jerusalem and Tel Aviv and visiting Brooklyn and staying with the Chabadnik family, I decided that I'm going back home, and with a vow to bring Americans, first of all, show them the best place in the world, which is the Israel, and of course my village as part of it. So I started with that, and then bringing Israeli Jews, as you say, of course, to see the village, to see the culture, to see the people. Because I found that so many people in Israel and outside Israel, they don't know enough about who we are, our background, our relation with the state of Israel, our relations with the building of the state of Israel as a Jewish state, which started years before 1948 when Israel was established, and that was very important. Strengthening the relation. That was the problem.
We run into conversations all the time about the treatment of Israeli Arabs and particularly Muslims. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like in the community and how your efforts as an Israeli diplomat are received in the Arab community?
First of all, one have to remember, Israel's population, or 20% of the Israeli population, are Arabs, not Jewish minority. Christians, Muslims, Jews, Circassians. Now the Bedouins are part of the Arab community. We are probably 2% of the overall Israeli population, around 180,000 people out of the 1.3 million Arabs in Israel. And again, put the Bedouin community in the side for a second and look at the Arab community as a whole. The Arab community lives in a situation where I don't think there's any other ethnic minority in the world living in their situation or their status. They are living in a country which is in a war situation with their brothers and sisters. The Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, Lebanese, Jordanians, Syrians, Egyptians. Now, the question of loyalty, again, I'm speaking about Bedouin, I'm speaking about the Arab community as a whole. The whole question of loyalty comes time after time. Are we loyal more to Israel or to the, and it's very hard. I think it's very hard, but it's changing. Like in the young generation is going more to college, going more to university. They are much more aware about their status, about their position as part of the Israeli society. Israel, of course, is the only democracy in the Middle East. Israel's Declaration of Independence guarantees equality and non-discrimination, based for its citizens, Arabs and Jews. But of course, it's not a perfect country. Israel is not having its own, issues, inequality, discrimination, if you want. But I think, after all, it can be an example, not only to the Middle East, but I think to the Western country as a whole, where a minority can live equally, almost, again, with the freedom of religion, freedom of, expression in all fields, and the community is thriving.
Ishmael, if there were one thing to improve the situation for the Bedouin in Israel, what would you suggest?
Education and infrastructure. Education and infrastructure. Look, the Bedouin community is a nomadic culture. We used to be nomads, and of course, as a result of that, education wasn't part of the culture. So people didn't build schools, not kindergartens, not elementary schools. And in the last few decades, and especially since Israel was established, where education is a compulsory course or mandatory, Bedouins started to get more education. But still, I think the settlement process, you can see that in the Negev, among the Bedouins of the Negev, because we are two different communities in Israel. The Bedouin community in the Negev is still left for many reasons: cultural, some policy making, lacking the basic infrastructure for kindergartens, for schools. And I think this is the key issue for a successful integration into a modern society, into Israeli modern society, and of course to move the culture forward. I think there is a full acknowledgement today in the Israeli government, different institutions, despite the bureaucracy, that if you want to improve, if you want to change this, help this culture, this minority move forward, we have to invest more in education.
Now, Ishmael, we're seeing rising anti-Semitism throughout Europe, and we just saw, a malicious crime committed on the streets in Britain. And you're in Britain. Can you give us a little understanding about the community there and how it feels toward Israel, and maybe a little bit understanding of the Muslim community in Europe and how it feels toward Israel?
Well, you asked a question, I think, with there can be three different issues. First of all, the atmosphere toward Israel here in this country is very negative. And the civil society, I'm speaking. If you go to a campus today, if you go to a church, again, I don't want to generalize, but for the most part, if you go to a trade union, the atmosphere toward Israel is extreme, and it is negative. Sometimes we are not able even to be accepted to speak at university. And of course, that's not only in Britain, but also all over Western Europe. Speaking about Western Europe, I have no idea where this is coming from. I mean, I have no idea why, for instance, the Church of Scotland only Thursday a week ago published a document which almost disconnect the connection between the people of Israel, or the Jewish people, to the land of Israel. Again, theological, argument that I have no idea. I mean, it's not easy. The far radical left here in this country, no matter what the issue is, day and night, they are tirelessly active against Israel. Again, on campuses, trade unions, and of course, everybody is leaning on the Palestinian issue, the conflict with the Palestinians, as a reason. But I don't think this is a reason. I don't think it's because of their love for the Palestinians. I don't think this is because of a few settlements in the West Bank. That isn't the reason. I think it's a deep hatred. Now, you mentioned also the Muslim community. There's no doubt it's one of the growing communities here in this country. I have to tell them, this is what I'm doing part of my work, because I'm a diplomat after all. I'm trying to reach out for some of their leaders. Okay, at the most part, they don't talk. They don't agree with anything we have to say, because of political reasons. But some of them they listen. Some of them open the doors for yourself, and tap on our head. They tell us this is wrong, and until the Palestinians get their own state, there want to be a solution for it. And Israel will be always perceived here in a very negative light. Of course, there is the extreme, cells, I think, who are dealing with, terrorism, anti-Western education, and so on. I'm not dealing with that. That is not my part of my mandate. I'm sure there's the security, the relevant institutions who are dealing with it.
Ishmael, I'm assuming you follow quite closely the Arabic media coverage on the Middle East. What do you see as listening directly towards the Arabic media that we don't get in the English language media?
Look, the Arabic media is not, they are not Zion lovers, let me say. I do that. I think 2 or 3 of the main, Arabic newspapers in the world are being published here, in London, or based in London. Their attitudes obviously extreme. Their attitude obviously is against Israel and against many of the Arab regimes, by the way. So there are other media, outlets not here in this country, but of course in the Middle East, who are much more extreme. I'm not dealing with that again. I'm dealing with the mainstream Arab media who is here. The Arab community, by the way, who are a bit more than 500,000 people in this country, probably much more. Again, I'm following, what the survey says, polls says, have their own newspaper. They have 2 or 3 local newspapers, weekly newspapers. I follow that. I'm trying to follow and learn what is going on, what is happening. Arab community here, by the way, they are not, being involved in any political process. They are dealing with themselves, and they by themselves also are divided. Iraqi Arabs, the Gulf Arabs, Egyptian Arabs, Lebanese Arabs, Palestinian Arabs. So there's no, kind of leadership. And culturally, everybody is, separated. There's no, say, one overall or umbrella organization that put them or unite them together. Those newspapers, the local newspapers, dealing with, again, cultural, employment, health, education. Those are, by the way, the scene. I know if there are any other activities happening, that is not what I'm dealing with.
Now, I saw an article just today in the Times of Israel that's about French imams working with Israeli imams trying to combat anti-Semitism. And this is, I guess the leader of the group is Hassan Chalhoumi, who's the imam of the Parisian suburb of Drancy, who responded to the attacks against the Orthodox school in Toulouse by kind of reaching out to the Jewish community. Have you had any connection to that whole issue and to the Israeli imams that are involved in kind of reaching out to work on this?
So again, my mandate is only here in the United Kingdom by itself, and since I arrived about 15 months ago to London, I'm trying to do this to reach out to the leaders of the community here, because yes, in a way they are being used. Again, it's not, of course, for this discussion, the reasons for the anti-Israel activities in this country, I think it's deep and based, the very deep, and in my eyes, based on pure anti-Semitism. There's no other reason. I'm saying that as a human being, not just as a Israeli representative. Of course, they are leaning or using the Arab community, some of the Muslim community, trying to recruit them for their causes. Leaders of every anti-Israel organization here, except for, say, the Jews for Justice in Palestine and the Friends of Al-Aqsa, the main anti-Israel organizations here, this is how I call them, are led by mainstream British citizens. And of course, in their activities, if that's, campaigns, demonstrations, protests, they use Arabs, Muslim students, some extreme Muslim clerics who are, based here. But I'm trying to reach out for, leaders in the Muslim community. I met with them. I'm meeting with them. They met with me in the Israeli embassy. They came and they said clearly, we don't agree with you. We don't accept what Israel is doing. But at least they are speaking, they are talking, they are listening, and of course are open because they deeply believe in a dialogue. And we are giving them the example of Israel being a multicultural society, a multilingual society, and of course multi-religious society where freedom of religion is in top of its values. And they learn from that. There's no there's no other way than opening the dialogue and speaking. One of the leaders, of course, of this group right now in Israel, they are participating in the the International Conference to combat anti-Semitism, is from here. Imam Abdul Jalil Sajid is a Pakistani, one of the most respectful, imams here in the UK, and he is, I think he was the star, not the French one. He was the star right now in Israel because of what he said. That only through a dialogue and a joint force between Jews and Muslims, he said that about France specifically, but of course globally, we can better fight and combat hatred and anti-Semitism against Jews, against Muslims, and so on.
Ishmael, how severe is the split between the Shia and the Sunni?
Well, it depends where you ask. You ask me, look, I'm not expert on about those issues. There's a difference. If you're asking about the situation in Iraq, in Bahrain, in Lebanon, it depends. We see those things right up are rising in all of those issues. The troubles, by the way, in Bahrain, and again, that's not my mandate to speak about other countries, but between the minority, or the majority who are Shiites and the regime, is very extreme. Now it's happening again in Lebanon. And Lebanon is not a new story. Lebanon is, I think, drowning in this civil war, ethnic and religious, since the middle of the 1970s. Iraq, the story probably better than me. So there's a split. And it's a sad thing, I guess. It's,
Ishmael, how are you received when you speak to Arab audiences and Muslim audiences, or are they even willing to listen?
Well, they do listen. If you do make a Google or not Google, YouTube, click my name or my last name, Khaldi or Ishmael Khaldi, and Edinburgh, the University of Edinburgh, for instance, in Scotland, it shows you exactly what happened to me 2 years ago. I went to speak there, and after 130 students who came to listen, 20 of them stood up and started to shout and chant and freedom for Palestine, freedom for Egypt. People who are on the far left, they are not Muslims and not Arabs, and they are using those causes. Look, the Arab community and Muslim community are less active in those issues. When I go to university here, when I go to speak in local organization, the leading, the leading, I would say, protesters are not Muslims. The Muslims, they come, they listen, they are very respectful, I have to say. They ask very tough questions, okay? But, they listen, they do respect. I think that is very, very important to mention. They respect, they don't agree at the most part, there's no way, but they do listen. And some of them, if you ask me again about my case, in my case, I think their reaction at the most part is of confusion, because they don't know. I'm speaking about, second and third generation who grew up here. For them, Israel is what they know from the elders of Zion and so on. Israel is, enemy of the Arab and Muslim world. Israel is them fighting Palestinians and so on. But to see an Arab, a Bedouin, Muslim like myself, representing Israel, which is the most important thing, to them that is confusing. That's an issue. Many of them don't want to accept it. But look, we live in a crazy world, as they say. But trying to talk to people, trying to explain that the situation is totally different. Israel is democracy. Israel is a multicultural society. Israel wants to make peace with everybody, even with Iran. Up until the end of 1970s, Israel had an embassy in Tehran. Iranians are not Israel's enemy. No way. I mean, we are not seeing them as our enemy. The problem is with the regime and its poisonous venom of hatred and that is the situation.
Ishmael, can water be a factor in making peace?
Can what?
Water.
Well, there's no doubt. The water is the liquid of life. There's no way. There's no doubt. Yes, water can be a resource to fight about for death even.
One of the things that I wonder is you had mentioned the protocols of the elders of Zion, and I'm kind of wondering what you see when you speak to various audiences versus is real things that are going on in Israel and the real challenges that Israel faces in dealing with Palestinians and dealing with the Israeli Arab population versus things that are kind of crazy conspiracy theories, elders of Zion kind of things. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Look, people, I'm saying again, I mentioned this in the beginning, I think, people are driven by blind agenda of hatred. That's it. People who are coming from the far radical left and people who even have no agenda, okay? They are coming from with all kind of thoughts. Israel for them is most extreme, again, without using any kind of words here. So that's deep in their blood. I mean, it's no matter what you offer them, if that's a speaker or myself or someone else, don't to speak about Israel, or someone like Israeli artist, Israeli even dancer, and we are seeing this day and night. They don't want to see Israel. The title is Israel abusing human rights, Palestinian human rights. Okay? They are speaking about today. Israel is abusing human rights. Israel built, an apartheid wall. Israel is a racist country, and because of what is happening, what it is doing to the Palestinians, and of course, Israeli citizens, the Arab Israeli citizens, which is totally not correct. And we are trying to change, their not their minds, but their way of thinking. It's very hard. It's challenging.
Ishmael, Rabbi Kaufman in particular deals very closely here in Iowa with the Sudanese community, many of whom are Muslim to begin with. It opens up a discussion on many different levels. One of these levels has to do with the acceptance of the Sudanese who wish to take refuge in Israel. What's happening on that front?
Look, let me be clear. Israel is have an organized set of rules about immigration and about people who are infiltrating illegally and so on. The situation of the Sudanese coming through Sinai into the Negev and the Israeli territory into Israel is a very sad and painful issue, because you are coming all the way, escaping their country, coming through Egypt, hundreds of miles, walking in the heat of the summer in the desert, because they know and they heard that there is an oasis for them, that there is a country they can live in peacefully, and they call it the garden, little garden of Eden, Israel. They're of course being tortured, and then when they come to the border, Israeli military have rules, not to accept anyone, because again, we are a country. Israel is an organized country. But when this happened, kids and older women and people who are sick, after those hundreds of miles or thousands of miles sometimes, who want to come, Israel have a very sacred value when it comes to human assistance. Okay, you can't see someone, even your enemy, and leave him alone and without helping him. So Israel accepted thousands, tens of thousands, can't remember the numbers, but helping them, giving them medical aid and food and shelters. But again, it's very, it is very painful story. But try to imagine when they come to Egypt, what happened to them. Try to imagine if look at what's happening in Syria. But Syrians escaping or fleeing from Syria, from the massacre day and night, they go to Jordan. Look what's happening to them. They go to Lebanon, the same thing. North Iraq, the same story. Going to just crossing the border, and on the other side, people are shooting them and calling them and abusing them. In Israel, told absolutely no. That is a story that.
One of the groups that we deal with here, some of the groups that we deal with here are peace activists. And I wanted to get your idea on how you speak to peace activists. I'm sure you do in Britain as well, and did in San Francisco when you were there, about being trying to promote peace and reaching out to the Muslim community who they're also trying to reach out to. Is there a way to dialogue that you see that you can suggest to us?
Well, absolutely, there is no doubt. I think first of all and above all, you have to make it clear to them that in order to speak, in order to talk, you have to disconnect and make a clear separation between politics and social peace issue. Okay, because peace is based on human dignity, on respect, mutual respect between each other. Look, I'm coming from a culture where hospitality is the best known part, and it's the most important part. And hospitality is not just opening your tent or your house for me and feed me. No, it's just respect me. I can think differently from you. I can have different social ideas, different political ideas. Okay, but still, as a human being, I have to respect. And that's, by the way, is in the three main religions: Christianity, Judaism, and of course Islam. It is there. The question is, how do you use it? How did you interpret it? And look, Israel, as Israelis, when I was speaking to people, when I go and talk to people, I'm representing a government. I'm representing a state, which is, agree with it or not, always in the political headlines. Wherever you go on the globe, you will hear on Israel only through political eyes. And so you have to make this separation. You have to talk to people as a human being, first of all, and above all. And when there is a will and clear intention, I think it works, and people know how to do it. In the history of the embassy here in London, there was no Muslim leader who came and met, not But it happened when I came here. It happened, and they, opened their mind. They didn't become, big Zionists next morning, but of course they understood that their situation, which is totally different from maybe the media brings them, from what the newspapers portray for them. Same thing in San Francisco. And I met Muslims, of course, in South Africa. I traveled around the world. I think they do listen. Once they know that, politics is one thing, and of course, social, cultural issues, economy, sports, music, is of course have nothing to do with politics. That is the key for success.
The Arab population in Israel is not compelled to do military service. Is there some way to bring the Arab population closer to the mainstream by having them participate somehow in some sort of a national service?
Yeah, absolutely. The Israeli Arabs were waived from military service by first Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, and the reasons were clear. But there's no doubt. I think the younger generation is much more aware about doing, national service, civil service. There's lots of talks about that. There's lots of, controversy among the Arab leaders themselves, the Arab citizens themselves. Some say, no, we are, being discriminated against, treated as second-class citizens, so we want our rights first, and then we'll consider military service. But, national service even, because they think, again, that it is a recruitment, that the government is recruiting them without giving them full rights in education, in health services, in infrastructure, budgets, and so on. But I think the numbers are growing. Like every year, you see the numbers of Arab citizens, especially women, by the way. Right after high school, they serve in hospitals and community centers. The numbers are growing, and there's lots of criticism within the Arab community. If you ask me in person, I think it should be mandatory, at least 1 year, for a national service or civil service, call it whatever you want to call it. A person finishing high school, going to spend 1 year in his own community, even in the school, work with needy people, work in the hospital, volunteer, give your time. I think it's a basic thing here in the city of Israel. Yes, the issue of inequality, the issue of discrimination, of getting rights, I think that's a needs a political lobby or political participation and different discussion. It has to be done or can be done at the same time. And again, let's not ignore it. I think the Israeli different authorities throughout the years failed to deal fairly with Arab citizens of Israel. But I think situation is changing. I mean, today there is much more understanding, there is much more awareness, and I think it's going on the right direction.
Can you give us a little idea of kind of what happens in the Bedouin community when somebody graduates high school and decides to go into service? What they do, and kind of maybe a little background of what you did.
Well, my story is one thing, and the rest of the Bedouin community is different thing. I wish that no one would do the same thing that I did until get to where I got. I want people to have much easier life and with the full facilities. Growing up until 8 years old in a tent and having to walk those kilometers back and forth, and then never giving up and joining the military and then defense ministry, going to university, bachelor's degree and master's degree. That's not the typical default for a Bedouin young man. A Bedouin young man traditionally was expected to finish high school. If he went to high school at all, 18 years old. That's the Gil Bagrut. That's how to say it in Hebrew, the age of maturity. And then, which is 18, and then get married and live with a family, build your own family. But today, no, young man today finish elementary school, continue to high school, then go to volunteer for a military service. I would say around 75% today do military service voluntarily in the north, because the Bedouin or the Negev, that's a different story. Sorry?
Okay. No, we were just talking about issues we want to still talk about. We're going to need to take a quick break, though. And then I think afterwards, Mark had a question about social services in the community. We're going to take a short break because we got to take a short commercial break here. And then when we get back, we'll continue our conversation. So we'll take a short break.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershide.
I'm administrative manager.
I'm the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're going to do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money-back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you going to say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're going to be listening. They're going to want to know what your challenges are. Then they're going to come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going, though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
Enough said.
Shalom. Welcome back to Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman. I'm joined in the studio by Mark Finkelstein of the Jewish Federation of Greater Des Moines, and we're joined by Skype by Ishmael Khaldi from London. So Ishmael, thank you for joining us. And we just have a couple kind of last-minute questions. Mark, did you want to ask?
Yeah, the last Israeli election seemed to hinge a lot on social services and domestic policy. Where is that going, and how can the Israeli society prevent the further cleavage between the haves and have-nots?
Well, I think now it's up to the new government, the new foreign minister who became the star of those elections. Someone who had nothing to do with politics before in Israel stood up and became the second man in Israeli government. Look, in my eyes, and I have to be honest, I'm really speaking from the top of my heart, because I came from like one of the most, I would say, misperceived, minorities in the state of Israel who have their own social and economic issues. I said before, Bedouins are shepherds and not high-tech engineers. And our situation is not much better than the Ethiopian Jews, than the other part of the population, Jews and Arabs who are living in other parts of the country. Look, what happened in the last few years, and that is very, very interesting. What happened in the last few years, the economic gap and social gap between the different parts of the population were widening. People living in the same city, and that's not just a cliche. Look, people who are living in North Tel Aviv are living in one ward, and people who are living just 5 minutes drive south, living in totally different, ward. People who are hardly getting, the minimum salary wage a month, and people who are, some of them are world tycoons. And there's no solidarity. I think that's a very sad thing, that when factories in the northern part of the country or in the Negev were closing for business, firing tens if not hundreds of simple workers, sending them home, leaving them unemployed. People in the center of the city, in those rich neighborhoods, didn't care even. That's a sad story. But what happened 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, in Tel Aviv, when the price of a cottage cheese, it's very ridiculous, I think. It's very, really silly thing. Just the 20 cents, let me say, 20 agorot in Israel, went up. The whole country, stood up on its legs, having the largest protest in the history of the country. So, but on one side, it's a good thing. On the other side, it's not. But it shows about, the gaps, or the social, gaps in the society. And right now, to be honest with you, again, I'm a diplomat, I'm civil servant. I don't think that the policy of the new government is going in the right direction. I see that in the news. I see, the taxations on poor people, the same like rich people, and it's a sad thing.
We have to wrap up here in a minute. Do you have anything that you'd like to share with us before we have to let you go?
Okay, I think that the message of Israel had to be, stronger as, a democratic state. People are hearing about the Middle East, about so-called, Arab Spring. Tens of thousands of people were killed by their own regime. In Syria, nobody's saying a word. The situation in Lebanon, which is coming, I think, to a big explosion, I guess, based on, ethnic, maybe even religious clash, and nobody's saying anything about it. Look about the big split between the Palestinians themselves, Hamas, who are, led by a terrorist, agenda, and Fatah in the West Bank, totally different, two different states, and nobody's speaking anything about it. They are pointing on Israel as the reason for, all the troubles in the world, the Middle East. I think this is a hypocritic approach, and this is our responsibility, moral responsibility, if I can say, citizens of the State of Israel, to stand up with our, friends, supporters all over, to show that the story is totally different. The growing anti-Semitism here in Europe, but I am seeing that for no other reason than pure anti-Semitism, is the main enemy, or the main threat for Israel today. Israel back home dealt with terrorism, dealt with enemies from its neighbors since it was established, but dealing with it and coping with it successfully. But what is happening here in the West, I think this is the big challenge, the big threat, of course, and it's our responsibility to stand up hand in hand and to show that Israel is totally different from what it is being portrayed. Israel is a democracy. Israel is a multicultural society. Israel is a multilingual society. And it's pointing a hand for peace. At the same time, doing and will do everything possible within its boundaries as a democratic regime to protect its citizens from terrorism, protect its citizens from nuclear threat from Iran, and from any other threat around.
Ishmael Khaldi, thank you for joining us on Understanding the World today. It's been very enlightening for me. I know from for a lot of our guests, it'll be the first time they've ever heard from an Israeli Muslim or potentially even an Israeli Arab talking about any of these things. It's been great having you on the show today, and we hope that you have a wonderful evening, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much, and Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Yeah.